Good afternoon, everyone. I want to officially welcome you to the Navigating the Changing Waters Higher Education webinar for today. My name is Rachel Krusel. I'm going to be leading the webinar as well as moderating today. I'm so pleased to have all of you here with us from across the country. So we've got lots to dig into today, so let's get going. So first off, as I said, my name is Rachel. I'm a Territory Sales Director here at TextHelp. I'm going to give you a little bit more information on my background, but part of this webinar is to introduce you to me, since I'm the newest, one of the newest text helpers at TextHelp. I currently have my contact information on the screen: phone, Twitter, email, so feel free to contact me at any time if you have questions after the webinar or as our relationship develops over the next weeks and months as I support you. So a couple housekeeping items before we get going today. We have all the participants' mics on mute for today. If you do have any questions, please feel free to throw them in the questions window in kind of your side panel. We'll watch those throughout the webinar. We'll kind of answer them mostly at the end unless there's something really pressing that we'll kind of interject as we go. As we said in all of your email communication, you will get a recording of the webinar, so feel free to listen to it later again if you need clarification. Send it out to people if you want to share it with someone on campus. If you think, ooh, this is something that is really great for my instructional designers to take a look at, feel free to share it out with them and make sure to let them know to get in touch with any of us if they have questions. I could not do this webinar alone, so I've got two wonderful text helpers joining me. Kathleen and Louie, who I'm going to let them chime in and give you a quick little minute of who they each are. You guys want to step in and introduce yourselves?
Sure, I can go first.
Sure.
I'm Kathleen. I am our product manager for Read&Write. I've been with TextHelp for about 6 years now. And my role is basically, I like to think of myself as sort of the go-between between our customers and people actually using our products, telling us what they want to see, what changes they want, what updates they want, and then our software developers that I work with to basically help, shape our products so that they do what you all want them to do. So I'm going to be talking about a little bit about Read&Write today.
And my name is Louis Shanafelt, and I, unlike Kathleen, who's been there 6 years, I've been here about 6 months, so I'm relatively new to TextHelp, much like Rachel. I come from Central Florida, where I worked for a district office for approximately 20 years. So I have several years in the classroom experience as well as instructional design experience. And much like what Kathleen described in her role with TextHelp, I do from the EquatIO side, which is our STEM tool. And I'm excited to be able to kind of show you some different things that you can do to make math and science digital, as well as, continue discussions with accessibility and to kind of help you on your journey with these TextHelp products. So excited to be with all of you today.
Thanks to you both. I wanted to bring them along just because they know the most of anyone on these products, so you're getting all the info directly from them. So what is today going to look like? I'm going to take just a couple minutes to introduce you to myself, since many of you will be working directly with me. And then, as we kind of talked about, there's a handful of pain points that people in higher ed are dealing with right now. So we want to just talk about these pain points, put them in perspective, maybe let you know that you're not alone in this, but mostly we want to provide solutions to you. We want to be able to give you updates on our tools, solutions of how our tools can fit in and make your lives hopefully easier, save you time, because that's what we're here for. We're here to support your students, we're here to support your institutions, and we want to provide any support we can. So let's talk about who am I. As I mentioned, I am one of the newest territory sales directors here at TextHelp. I'll be supporting the higher education institutes in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Iowa, and Missouri. And then I also support the K-12 schools in Minnesota as well. I come from just shy of 10 years of higher education experience. I worked at 2 institutions in the state of Minnesota, Augsburg University and the University of St. Thomas, over the last 10 years as an assistive technology specialist, as well as I coordinated all of our sort of accommodations that an office would put in place for a student. I'm a RESNA certified assistive technology professional, so I've got some credentials behind me, sort of like a speech language hearing pathologist or an occupational therapist. So I've got a lot of sort of professional experience in assistive technology, sort of across the lifespan, across devices, and I'm extremely accessibility focused. One of my roles at both institutions was really leading accessibility across the college campus. So I'm extremely in tune to those parts of higher education. And then you might have heard me, you might have worked with me before, you might have seen me present. I have come from many years of doing professional development through conferences, trainings. I've done lots of work with the head. So you may have heard of me, seen me. I have maybe worked with you in sessions before. My big thing that I want to convey to all of you is that I'm here as a resource. I'm here for support. I want you to feel comfortable reaching out at any time with questions. And there's a great team behind me at Text Help that I am leaning on constantly as I'm coming into my new role. They're all the best, and we're all here to support you. So let's talk about these pain points in higher education. As I was sitting here kind of getting this webinar together, I came up with kind of 4 of them, 4 big pain points that I'm seeing myself as in the last 10 years in higher education, when I left a few months ago to join Text Help, but I'm still seeing now in my colleagues and my customers and accounts and things like that. So the first pain point that I'm seeing is the difficulty in getting textbooks and accessible digital files to students. So let's break this down a little bit. If you are in a role in disability resources, accessibility, alternative format textbook conversion, right now there is a surgence of things going on in regards to PDFs, EPUBs with publishers, getting books to students, maybe getting them in a version that works for them. This just gets bigger and bigger every year. And one of the big issues is the EPUB battle with publishers. We could spend an entire hour talking about just this, but I just want to recognize that this is going on. It's a kind of a confusing time right now in higher ed when it comes to this. And you all need solutions for how to manage this. In addition, the numbers of students needing support are growing every single year when it comes to students who could be benefited by tools like text helps. There are probably more students than you think who could benefit from things like text to speech. Traditionally we thought it was sort of only students who had dyslexia or a learning disability impacting reading. But if you really break down disability, does the disability impact reading for a student? Does it impact that? And if we really think of it that way, you'll quickly start to realize it's not just students with dyslexia, it's not just students with ADHD, but what about our students who have concussion and brain injuries, our students with mental health, where either just the mental health condition or the medication maybe that the student is taking impacts their ability to read? What about students with physical disabilities having to carry books around? I mean, the list kind of goes on. And I would argue that anywhere from probably half to 2/3 of the students on your caseload can benefit from a tool like a text-to-speech tool as an accommodation. In addition, what this workflow looks like with schools is varied based on your resources that you have. I've done sessions in the last few years working with schools on how do you distribute these files? How do you get them from your office to a student? Are you using any type of file management system like Microsoft or Google that your school might be using? And then the whole accessibility of files. Are they readable? Are they digital? Are faculty creating copies of files for students and posting them online that you can easily get to a student and a student can easily use without a lot of back work from the Disability Resource Office? Or are you in a team of accessibility specialists on campus and conversion specialists having to do all this legwork to make sure these files are usable? All of this comes down to time. I know personally from my own experience from working with my colleagues, time is of the essence. We have less and less of it every day, every year in our jobs. We're asking to do more with less time. And so how do we do this as quickly and efficiently as possible so you can deal with all the other fires that you're putting out? So that kind of sets up pain point 1. And I'm going to throw it over to Kathleen. She's going to start to chat with you about some of our solutions and things that our tool can do in order to support you in this area. Kathleen, the floor is yours.
Great, thanks, Rachel. All right, I'm going to share my screen here. Just get to the right slide. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about how Read and Write can help address some of the pain points regarding, getting digital and accessible materials into the hands of students, particularly those students who would benefit from the support tools that Read and Write can offer, and really being able to access those tools regardless of what type of documents or what types of files they're using, whether they're on a desktop computer or on a tablet, wherever it may be. I'm going to show you a few examples of how different platforms of Read and Write can help with this. And I'll start with a little bit of a quick note. We're going to talk a bit more about this at the end of the webinar, but Read and Write, when you have a license of Read and Write, it entitles you to access multiple versions of the software, so that if students are working on their personal laptops or a Chromebook or a desktop computer on campus, there's always going to be some version of Read and Write that can support them. So I might jump around a little bit when I'm talking about some of the different tools and where they can be used, but just keep in mind that whether you're Google or Microsoft at your schools, or what types of devices you're using, there's going to be a support that Read and Write can provide to students. So 3 main things I'm going to focus on today. First, I want to show you our brand new EPUB reader. So Rachel talked about some of the challenges around getting books in EPUB format. So I'm going to show you a way that once those files are in the hands of students, they'll be able to read them and get the literacy supports that they need. Then I also want to talk about the Text Help PDF reader. PDFs are obviously one of the most commonly used file types. So our PDF reader helps to make that content both accessible and collaborative. So I'll show you a little bit about how that works. And then lastly, all PDFs and those types of files, in order to use tools like Read and Write, they need to be accessible. So I'm going to talk about a few options that Read and Write provides for actually making those files be accessible and sort of getting them prepared for a student to use Read and Write with them. So with that being said, I'm going to pop out of my slides here, and I want to show you the EPUB reader. So the EPUB reader is an app that will basically be able to allow students to open EPUB books, whether they're in Google Drive, OneDrive, or saved locally on their device. So if students are using Google Drive, whether it be their school organizational Google account or on a personal Gmail, if they're using Google Drive to store files and books that they need for school, they can open those EPUBs up really easily with Read and Write. So I've got a few different EPUBs here in my drive. All I need to do is right click on one and choose Open with Read and Write for Google Chrome. And this is going to open up with my Read and Write extension. So I have that option if I'm in Google Drive. Now, how would I do this? I know typically, higher ed is often more Microsoft heavy than Google, which is maybe more common in K-12. So how would I do this if I use OneDrive or if I have a file locally saved on my device? So all I need to do here is install the EPUB, the Text Help EPUB reader. So I just go to epub.texthelp.com, and I'm presented with this little kind of dashboard that gives me a few different options, one of which is installing the EPUB reader as an app on my device. So if I'm on a desktop computer, I now have access to that EPUB reader right on my desktop. If I'm on a Chromebook, this will install it right into the apps sort of area on the Chromebook. So now I have really easy access to a way to open up any of my EPUB files. So I'm going to choose a file from my device. Got a nice demo file here from Bookshare, which may be a really popular source for where students' EPUBs are coming from. So now this is opened up in the Text Help EPUB reader. So I'll skip forward to a page that has some actually interesting content on it here. Not the very lengthy table of contents. And now the best part about this is it integrates right with Read and Write. So I have Read and Write for Google Chrome installed in my browser, and all I have to do is click on the little tab, and now I get my Read and Write toolbar with all of the different features that I'll be able to use here. So for students that benefit from hearing text read out loud to them, I can use the hover speech tool. So I just click on my hover speech icon on the far left of the Read and Write toolbar, hover over some text, and I'll hear that read aloud.
Some markets involve a physical marketplace. Traders on the New York Stock Exchange get together in a trading pit. Traders on eBay.
So a couple of things that are going on here. You can see that Read and Write is, using a pretty natural sounding voice as far as text-to-speech voices go. And there's also this dual color highlighting that it's doing. So as the text is being read out loud, one color sort of block highlights the sentence, and then a different color tracks along with the words. So that can be really helpful for students to follow along for comprehension. If they're not actually watching the screen, they can just hit play and let it read through their document while they're maybe taking notes or multitasking. So that text-to-speech feature is really useful for those students who may struggle with reading, especially in higher ed, transitioning from K-12 to higher ed. The amount of reading that you're required to do really increases, and so a tool like this can really help those students that may struggle with that workload. A few other tools and features that are available here. If I need comprehension support, maybe with like an individual vocabulary word, I can click on a word and go up to my dictionary and get a definition, and any of those can be read out loud as well. There's also a translator tool for students who may speak English as a second language or need that additional language support. That is a feature there too. Some other kind of more visual need-oriented features. The screen masking one is a really popular one. So if I'm someone who either struggles with focusing on a particular part of the page or has certain visual needs, I can tint my screen. So this screen masking feature will allow me to kind of use this reading light that will track along with my cursor. So if I wanted to just focus on a few of those lines that I'm reading, this can help me to do that. I can also remove this reading light. So if I want, my entire screen tinted a certain color, I can do that as well. So that's the screen masking feature and how that works in the EPUB reader. The last thing that I'll highlight here in the EPUB reader, which is possibly one of the most useful features, are these colored highlighters. So, a lot of times if students are required to do a lot of textbook reading, they're going to want to be taking notes or pulling out important information that they think, might be on a quiz or that they might use for a research paper at the end of the semester, whatever it may be. So these colored highlighters are really good for that sort of research and kind of outline building. So all I need to do is, if I find some information that I want to extract here or save for later, I can just highlight it and use any of these colored highlighters here. Just pick some text. And now this collect button will allow me to extract all of those highlights into a document. So I can choose which of those highlight colors I want to include. If I had, different highlights with the same color, I could choose whether I want to group those together or if I want them to just stay in the order of the document itself. And then when I click OK, what it's doing is it's generating a brand new Word document. In this case, I'm signed into my Office 365 account. So if I am a school that's using Microsoft, students will be able to collect any of those highlights, and it automatically generates a new document in their OneDrive that contains all of those highlights, and then it even gives me the title of the book that I was reading. So it might help me to go back and build a bibliography or works cited later. So those are just a few of the tools that can be used in that EPUB reader. So once students have that file or that book in their hands, or well, I guess digitally, not literally in their hands, but once they've got them digitally, they'll be able to open them up and get all of those sorts of supports that they need from Read and Write.
Hey, Kathleen, can I ask you a follow-up question quick?
Sure.
From my view, it looks as though if a disability resource provider were to get a book from Bookshare or to get an EPUB from a publisher, there's really nothing that the disability resource staff have to do for students to get access other than to share the file with them. That doesn't look like there needs to be any editing done. No real accessibility needs to put into the file. It's sort of just a plug and play with the new EPUB reader, right?
Yep, yeah, that's right. As long as the student either has it in their Google Drive or OneDrive or just saved on their computer somewhere. All they have to do is open it up with the EPUB reader.
So no need to potentially go back to the publisher and say you need a PDF when an EPUB will work with our new file, our EPUB reader.
Yep.
Fantastic.
Awesome. So now I will switch gears a little bit and talk about another sort of very similar looking tool, but one that works for PDFs. So as we know, PDFs are one of the most commonly used file types for everything from textbook chapters to problem sets to health forms that you need to fill out. They really make it easy to make things that are paper become digital. But often the area that PDFs can fall short in is accessibility, and particularly for those students who have accommodations and need certain literacy supports. So the TextHelp PDF reader can address some of those concerns by adding supports to PDF, very similar to what I just showed in an EPUB. So for the PDF reader, let's say I have a PDF in my OneDrive, so I'm signed into my Office 365 account here. Same thing will go if you're signed into your Google account. So if I have a PDF in my OneDrive and I have my TextHelp PDF reader extension installed, which is right over here, all I have to do is click Open in Browser, and that is going to open up that PDF in my browser, and we'll see the Read and Write toolbar at the top, assuming it wants to cooperate with me. I'll try that again. Of course, I had it open in another tab and I closed it out. All right, it wants me to sign in again. Love when technology does this when you're on a webinar. Here we go. Okay. So now I have my PDF open finally, and you can see I have a very similar toolbar up here to what we were looking at with the EPUB reader. So when you have the TextHelp PDF reader installed, it will add all of these different reading comprehension and collaboration and sort of accessibility supports that students can use to better interact with the text. So I can do things again like reading the text out loud. With a PDF, oftentimes depending on sort of the quality of the PDF or the way that it's been created, if I look at this PDF here, the text is, the flow of the text is pretty easy to follow. But we've got a little like caption over here. We've got a little sort of note at the bottom. So if I were to try to just let this PDF read all the way through, it might not read in the order that I want it to. I know that, adding tags and sort of routing the direction of the reading in the PDF is something that can be done. But if, that's not always going to be possible, this click to speak button is a really nice way to kind of control the reading yourself as the user. So when I click on that tool, all I need to do is tap wherever I want it to read and it will start reading there.
In schools across the United States, physical education has been substantially reduced.
So if I wanted to, pop around to different paragraphs or read this caption over here, the click to speak tool allows me to sort of have that control over the reading. Now, again, I have my dictionary, I've got my translator, lots of different tools here for reading comprehension support. I can also, same as in that EPUB reader, I can use my highlighters. So if I were doing research here, I might highlight some terms and I can collect them. And again, that will create a Word document right in my OneDrive, or if I'm using Google, it'll go into my Google Drive. I do want to highlight a couple of things though that are different in the PDF reader, and that is some of these annotation tools. So this PDF is, kind of more reading focused, but let's say it was a problem set or something that a student actually needed to be able to fill out. There are a couple different tools they can use for actually writing on the PDF. So this typewriter tool, when I place my cursor somewhere, it will allow me to type an annotation. And for those students who benefit from writing supports, I can use word prediction here. I can use dictation. So rather than having to type with a keyboard, I can speak and have those words typed out for me. I can change the font size, color, all those sorts of things can be customized. When I'm happy with my annotation, I click the little check mark and it puts it right into my PDF. Now, the great thing about the PDF reader is that it's collaborative as well. So if I am reading this over with other students, maybe we're working on a project together, I can put annotations. Maybe I want to, circle a certain paragraph and have the other students look at it. Any of those marks and notes that I make are going to be visible to all the other collaborators. I can also even make comments in the PDF. So you can see over here, someone else has already made a comment. I can reply here. Again, I can use my prediction or my dictation feature to reply. So there's so many robust tools in here. I think I've done an hour-long webinar just on the PDF reader alone, because there are so many tools that can support students both with accessibility and with collaboration. So I would highly encourage you to dig into the PDF reader some more, because there's a lot of great stuff here. Now, of course, in order to use a lot of those tools in the PDF reader, that PDF needs to be accessible. So it needs to have gone through a process called optical character recognition. And this is something that trips people up a lot. But let's say you use a scanner to scan a textbook page and make a PDF out of it. That scanner might not be doing that OCR, optical character recognition process. So if you don't have access to a scanner that can do that, there are a couple different options with Read&Write. First of all, students can use the screenshot reader to sort of read that inaccessible text on the go. But teachers and students as well can use the desktop version of Read&Write. So that's Read&Write for Windows, and it has a built-in scanning feature. So the way that works is you can actually connect a scanner to your device, open up Read&Write, scan a piece of paper, and then it will allow you to choose whether you want to make a PDF out of it or a Word document, and the resulting file will be an accessible document that students can use Read&Write with. The other more common way I think that we typically see is if you've started with a PDF that's not accessible, you maybe got it on your desktop or in a folder, you can drag that into the scanning feature and you can replace it with an accessible version of that file. So in order to use those PDF reader tools that I showed, we also offer this scanning feature that can help to make those PDF files in a state where Read&Write can actually be used. So I think that wraps up my kind of talking points for that pain point 1 about how to get files into the hands of students and how they can use Read&Write. So Rachel, I will pass it back over to you and we will move along to the next pain point.
Sounds great. I do want to recognize that there are a handful of you that have questions about the EPUB reader and EPUBs in general. We're going to pull all those together at the end, and if for some reason we don't have time to hit all of them, I'll make sure to reach out to you or someone on our team will to ensure your questions are answered. There's some complex ones in there about VPATs and page fidelity, which fingers crossed we have time to get to, but we'll make sure that someone gets back to you in a timely manner about those. So let's talk about pain point 2, accessibility and access to STEM content. This is something that I am seeing quite a bit of in my role when I left higher education to come to work at Text Help. Textbooks for high incidence students, your learning disabilities in math, maybe ADHD specifically, weren't getting a lot of support in regards to how they were getting access to that math content. Solutions like Read&Write, read text, great, but there's really no tool out there that's reading math effectively up until a couple years ago. And again, these students, much like your students with learning disabilities or mental health students who could benefit from these tools, more than likely there's more students than you think that would benefit from having the ability to have digital math, to have accessible math, to have math STEM content read out loud. part of this that I saw all the time was around the proctoring of exams. Sometimes math and science content can get to be pretty complex as you're getting into the junior, the senior year of college and engineering and chemistry and high level math. And at small institutions, it's sometimes hard to find peer proctors in order to facilitate that accommodation and testing, who have the ability to know what to write without having for the student who's taking the test to explain every little thing that needs to be done. Having some tool that will allow for students to independently take their own exams, have these exams read out loud, is something that I ran into all the time. How do we do this? How do we do this in a cost-effective way with experienced proctors? In addition, the conversion of these math and science textbooks for students who are low incidence, our blind low vision, for example, can be a pretty arduous, time-consuming process. You know, having to convert from a PDF into MathML, for example, having to have that expertise and that level of human error can take a lot of time and expertise to get this book in a format that a student can access effectively. And then on top of it, we're just looking at the general accessibility of how STEM is provided to students, is given to students in the classroom, online. Again, our blind low vision students are struggling in this area to get that access. And so is there a tool out there? Are there solutions out there that can help disability resources get access to all of the students that you're working with? There's no perfect solution yet, but this is where I want to toss it over to my colleague Louie, who can explain what TextHelp is doing to address these needs of both our high incidence and our low incidence students. You ready, Louie?
Yep, I'm ready. That's a perfect setup, Rachel. I really appreciate it because, you know, you can see my screen okay, right, Rachel?
I can see it great.
Okay, so Rachel set that up really perfect for me because one of the things that EquatIO was built upon was those UDL principles to make sure that all students have equal access to the product in general. But once we started to make math digital, we really wanted to provide an opportunity to make it accessible on top of that, making a digital piece. So in showing that and talking about that, I want to talk just briefly before I go into the demo here about what accessible math looks like and what it is. So if we talk about accessible math in general, we know that we need, you know, it's really beneficial to obviously have a screen reader to be able to support that student that needs it, and also to be able to have the opportunity to sequence through it character by character, especially when you get into some of the higher education math that's out there and you don't want it just constantly read in one motion. So to be able to hear it character by character is really impactful. We want students to be able to independently edit and solve their math. You know, Rachel spoke briefly about, you know, the proctoring and how once you get up to this higher level math, it can become quite complex. And what EquatIO does is it takes away some of that human error that might occur during that conversion process. One of the things that we do really, really well is when we provide our math and our STEM content to our users, we layer it, and on the back end of that picture, which I'm going to show you, is we provide the alt text. So we can make that math accessible and editable, whether students are using NVDA or JAWS or any other type of screen reader software that's provided. We want to make sure that the math is searchable by users, and then mostly that it can be edited right within the product. Also, we love the idea that when we provide the math to folks, we want them to be able to use that same format that it was presented in to make their math. And the last thing here is the artificial intelligence that will have access to the math, which will provide really unlimited ways for users to learn. The last thing that I want to talk about before I switch over and go into a demo is MathML. So two things that we provide, and what I'm going to show you with our OCR that Kathleen spoke of, is we provide the MathML, but we also provide the LaTeX, which many users are familiar with. But if you're not sure, MathML is a universal format. It's been around for several years, and it is easily convertible into visible, audible, tactile, and machine readable forms. It's extremely important for that oral navigation that I spoke of earlier. And then finally, it does support the Braille math formats to provide that equal access for all students. I'm going to go ahead and jump out of the slide deck here and show back with my Microsoft Word document. it's difficult to know kind of what everyone wants to see in terms of, you know, do you want to see Microsoft or do you want to see Google? So when I do my demo here for you, I want you to understand that I'm going to probably end up with time constraints here, probably just show this in Microsoft. Had the unique opportunity actually to go to Accessing Higher Ground with Rachel herself and Paul Brown, who's one of our awesome text helpers that's kind of helped spearhead a lot of this accessibility with our STEM product, and got to learn how higher ed is using our product. And then also just a couple weeks ago, headed over to ATIA in Orlando, Florida, to learn more about accessibility and how higher ed is using EquatIO. So when I'm in a Microsoft Word document, I can easily just pin down in the taskbar EquatIO. I know this is what I'm going to use. Now, our Google comparative product is a Chrome extension. And if I have time, I can briefly swing over there and show what that looks like. But I'm just going to go ahead and access this from the Windows Store. And you'll notice that I came up with a couple different formats that I wanted to show you real quick. Is this math here, the quadratic formula was made in Microsoft's Math Editor. I made this one here in Math Type, and you'll notice that this image here was created with EquatIO. And when I emphasize that we made our product with the mindset that when we make our math, we're making it with an image, because when I click on that image, notice that when I click on this here, I can right click on it. And when I right click on it, I can edit the alt text. So that being said, when I do left click on this, I'm able to see this little menu bar on the right-hand side, and it is able to, you know, to read that math aloud using the screen readers that I mentioned before. So it will read out the quadratic formula for those students. Also notice that I decided to put some text along with my math. So not only was I able to make math inside of EquatIO, I was able to add text to it as well. So that way the screen reader can read all of it, and it stays on one line really nicely for the student and for the professor or teacher who may be grading it. So notice here at the very bottom, much like Read&Write provides a toolbar, we're going to provide a toolbar in our product. And much like Kathleen went over just kind of a brief overview of Read&Write, I want to do the same for you with EquatIO. We have within our product our built-in equation editor, which has many different types of formulas. So if I was to type in something like the correlation coefficient of sample, notice how all I typed in was COR, and COR provided me the opportunity to quickly access that formula, and watch how easy it is to just insert this right into my Microsoft document. And the reason why I'm showing this here is because once I pop that into the document, I can then click here on it, and since the alt text box is open, I can now go and look and see what that formula is. Again, being eligible to be read by a screen reader. So I have all sorts of different formulas and items within our prediction bank, which is really great for our customers because we're providing all these formulas for them if they have a premium access to our product. So notice that I went to this More button here, and then I went over to this drawer, and I can simply page down here or scroll down and access all the formulas that we're providing within our product. That makes things really easy and accessible for all students. The other thing here that's really imperative to show is we do have a LaTeX editor within our product. It's the second button here. So notice that our math prediction box has kind of jumped over here to the right-hand side, and I'll just type in something very similar here. Again, the correlation coefficient of sample. If I type it over here to the right, notice that the LaTeX appears on the left. So this will update in real time. So if I continue to add to this, let's say I want to put the plus sign in after it, notice the LaTeX will update in real time. Okay, so our LaTeX editor is great because customers love the idea that we can still go in and use this, this math typeset language. I can also jump over here. I'm going to erase that, and I'm going to go to our graph editor. Probably one of our most widely used and popular features inside of EquatIO is this graph editor. Notice, I don't know if you saw that, it's very quick, but it is powered by Desmos. So notice here that I can punch in graphs, and I can graph really anything. Just from a time standpoint, I already went ahead and popped in a graph for you. So notice this trigonometry problem here on page 2 of my Word document. And you might say, well, Louis, you said you use images in EquatIO, and images aren't necessarily things that we can edit. Well, not true with our product. So notice how I've clicked on this Desmos graph, and I can bring that math back into the product. So as long as I have it selected, I can click on Edit Math, and notice that when I click on Edit Math and I go back to my graph editor, the graph reappears, and I can add more lines here in Desmos if I want to. The thing that I thought would be really impactful to show too during this webinar is within the Desmos graphing, you might wonder, how does the accessibility piece fit in here? Now, we are somewhat limited on the accessibility pieces within this because we're limited to what Desmos provides us in our product. But one thing that they do have, which is really, really fantastic, is if I click on this line, for example, and I use a keyboard shortcut like Alt-T, I'm going to go ahead and turn on, this is challenging to do for you, but I'm going to see if I can't get this audio to be heard on your side there. And take a listen. So I did Alt-T, and I'm now going to tap the H key. Oh, that didn't work. Let's try this again. Alt-T, and then that is not working. Let me try to toggle that audio one more time for you.
Louis, I could hear what you were trying to do very faintly, so I can
You were.
promise it's doing it. Yeah.
Okay. So if I do Alt-T, if those of you that are taking notes throughout this webinar, if you do Alt-T, you should have the opportunity to tap the H key. I'm assuming that Desmos put that as H for hearing. So when I tap that H key, it will show and you will be able to audibly hear the pitch of that line. So if it's like a wavelength like you see here, you'll hear the ups and the downs of the that's being displayed. The other thing that I tried to do here is let me minimize this and go to the second graph. So I just pulled up maybe a lesser example for higher ed here, but if I just did something simple like a system of equations graph and clicked on this, if I pull this back now into EquatIO and hit Edit Math and go to my editor here, it's going to, again, show the system and the lines. And algebraically speaking, if I click on the first one and do Alt-T again and tap the H key, it's going to audibly play this line falling, okay? And you'll be able to hear that. You'll also hear it pitch and intersect at that access point. So that's pretty neat that it does that as well. This line here going in a positive motion, you'll hear the pitch going in an upward direction. So really, really great things that Desmos provides us in terms of accessibility for the graphing standpoint. The other thing here that I wanted to, and I have a little bit of time here left, is to show you our screenshot reader. And I'm gonna go ahead and pull over a video here of one of my favorite people here, Sal Khan. So lots of users love learning from this gentleman, going to khanacademy.com, watching him solve problems. And one of the great things that I can do is I can use EquatIO to capture math out in Chrome and bring that math into Microsoft Word. So let's say, for example, I want to access this math problem right here. I can click on my screenshot reader and notice how I can drag that capture window around the math. And what it's going to do is it's going to capture and render that math. It's going to read that math aloud, okay? And it'll play that math back for students. Again, like Rachel mentioned, the idea that they can hit this play button as many times as they need to is just fantastic, because a lot of students might not feel comfortable raising their hands 2 or 3 times asking for that help and support. But this right here is really where you can maximize EquatIO and what it can do. I can copy this LaTeX, or I can copy this MathML. So the MathML would be wonderful for students that need Braille conversion. I can copy LaTeX if I just want to bring this over into Word as well. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this MathML, and I'm going to go back to my Word document, and I can go ahead and close that. And if I go back to, let's say, another line here in my document, because I've already copied that, I can just Control V, and we give it a second, and notice that that math is copied over from that Sal Khan video. The same can be said, I can do the same thing, and Kathleen went over this quite a bit in terms of PDFs and their lack of accessibility, if you will. So notice here's a PDF here that I have open. Again, I can use this screenshot reader, capture this math in this capture window, and again, this is going to play the math out loud. And with the Microsoft version of this, you're actually given more options. You can copy the spoken text, you can edit it right in EquatIO and bring it right into our product, or you can copy it and move it. So for textbook conversion, this is really fantastic. Obviously for me, because I'm the EquatIO product manager / evangelist, I say let's edit this right inside of EquatIO. But you can edit it in other places. So let's say I want to copy this LaTeX, for example, and I go over to my Microsoft Word document. Again, if I copy the LaTeX, I'm going to need to open up EquatIO, open the LaTeX, and I'm going to Control V. And look what we just did. We just took all that math off of that PDF, which was previously inaccessible, and we created that math and made it accessible. How? Well, we made the math in EquatIO, and when I click on the Insert Math button, it's going to go right into that next line. And then again, what did I say before? If we click on an image, we can then right-click on that image, edit the alt text, and notice right down here, we have the limit over X, right arrow, and so forth. So we have all the alt text, again, which is can be read aloud with students with screen readers. So all of that stuff can't be said with the other different types of math editors that a lot of folks use. Again, you can take EquatIO math and you can bring it over and use the math type ribbon if you so desire and if that's your comfort level. But I'm going to go ahead and throw it back to Rachel if that's all right, because I've already gone just slightly over my time.
No, you're great. Perfect, Louie. So just a couple of things that I want to hit home just because of my experience. Literally, this tool allows students to reach math content, especially your high incidence students who are needing access to math to be read out loud, for them to create digital math, anywhere it's visually on a computer screen, whether that be a Word document, an inaccessible imaged PDF file that a faculty gives you. And we have other solutions with the tool that Louie didn't have time to show you, where if a faculty shows up at your office 2 minutes before test time, you can very easily and quickly even take an image of a math test and send it up to a student digitally so that they can have access to it to create math, to do this independently. If any of this was way over your head as a disability resource person with the graphs and the charts and the things that Louie was showing you, you're probably not alone. Just know that this tool gives students so many options to independently do math. And this is where you could even chat with your math department for a couple of minutes and say, hey, what does this look like? How does this intersect with the classes that our institution is doing at our school? So, all right, you guys can see my screen again. I'm going through Louis' slides to get us to pain point 3. Pain point 3 is finding tools that work with your learning management system.
Rachel, we're not seeing the slides.
Not seeing the slides. All right, let's have me show my screen. And can you see them now?
You're good now, Rachel.
Good.
Perfect, thank you. So let's talk about finding tools that work with your learning management system. So as we all know, learning management systems are kind of what is driving and in the backbone of education right now. Faculty are being told that they need to have their classes, some part of it, online. They're huge money makers for campuses. They're a way for teachers and faculty to interact with their students, to post course content. In addition, it's allowing more students to get access to courses that maybe who otherwise wouldn't come to campus. You can have students who are remote, students who maybe live far away and getting back and forth to campus as a challenge. Students with disabilities electing to take more classes online, students who have families and other things going on in their life, that having a set time frame can be challenging. In addition, so many of these classes online have math and STEM content. And when I say kind of STEM in quotes on our slide here, we're not just talking about math and chemistry and biology, but think about sort of other classes that have math content embedded in them. Things like accounting, economics, maybe operations management in your business department. And there's a variety of courses out there that have this math or science in the background, where there's really not always solutions within your learning management system for students to do the work, to take the tests within this platform. And so we're needing something for students to be able to get access to this content, whether it be reading or to be able to post online or math content. I mean, these tools are just every year becoming larger and larger in higher education and used more and more. So this question, this pain point actually hits both Kathleen and Louie. So Louie, why don't you go first and talk about integration with EquatIO?
Sure, absolutely. So one of the things that was, really wonderful prior to joining TextHelp is I got to do a lot of instructional design work, and the school district that I came from had been an adopter of Canvas, which is, made by Instructure out in the Salt Lake area. And our district loved Canvas. There were some things that we thought that Canvas could do better. One of those things being their math editor. And as I actually kind of did some former contract work for Canvas. And as much as I love their product, I didn't love their math editor. And when I saw EquatIO, I remember speaking to the former product manager and said, hey, is there any way we could somehow make a LTI and make EquatIO work within Canvas? Well, sure enough, I believe it was the summer of 2018, if I don't recall correct, or maybe it was the spring of 2018. Sure enough, we saw an LTI being made by our awesome development team at TextHelp, and Canvas all of a sudden, because Canvas actually is open access and they provide avenues for people to integrate nicely within their product, we were able to get EquatIO to be live within Canvas. So a really, really great and powerful tool as EquatIO is. We, of course, believe that we have the best equation editor on the market as it is, because of the prediction and the Desmos integration, the screenshot reader, and all the other things that I had some time to mention. We are in the process, just so those of you that may not be Canvas institutions, we are currently looking at other LMS systems, and those that we have kind of on the forefront and in the nearest horizon here, we have really good potential and discussions right now with Schoology, as well as Brightspace D2L. And we have also actually recently became partners with D2L. And we are looking at potential It's Learning integration. Most of those in that second bullet point, just so you're aware, we are crossing our fingers and are hopeful for integration by the end of this summer. Of course, there's always hangups and snags when you're dealing with other third-party vendors and whatnot, but I want you all to know that we believe in the LMS systems. We love that we can integrate with them, but there's some developmental challenges that we're trying to work through to get our integration to work correctly. The other LMS systems that are out there that you're probably familiar with are Moodle and Blackboard. Those are very in the early stages, probably won't see anything by any means or any stretch of the imagination by the summer. But if there is a significant demand and a push for integration with those LMS systems, then our development team can make that happen as well. So really good stuff that Rachel talked about. We know higher ed is using LMS systems, and now they've trickled their way down to K-12. So we, as a company, are interested in making sure that our products are working with those LMS systems. Go ahead, Rachel.
Perfect. Kathleen, you read
Yeah,
and write?
On the read and write side of things, first I'll say that many of the tools that I mentioned previously, like the EPUB reader and the PDF reader, those often work really nicely hand in hand with your LMS. A lot of times for when instructors are uploading materials to an LMS like PDF files or EPUBs or Google Docs, whatever it may be, those can then be easily saved and opened by students with our tools. And then in terms of using Read and Write directly inside the LMS, we've actually made an exciting update just in the last week or so. So now our word prediction feature and the talk and type feature, which is dictation, are now available in even more places on the web when you're using the Read and Write for Google extension. So this includes LMSs, it's going to include Gmail, Outlook Online, pretty much anywhere that you're typing, whether you're a Google user or a Microsoft user, those tools are now going to be able to support students. So that's a particular area of emphasis for LMSs because students spend so much time working in there. And I have a little GIF in there just demonstrating the prediction feature working inside of a demo LMS account there. So definitely encourage your students to check that out.
Thanks, you two. And then just to round out today, pain point 4, meeting students where they technologically are at. Students come to campus with a variety of tools: Windows, Mac, Chromebooks, tablets, Android. They have preferences of where they do their document creation, how they do file management. I worked with a school this morning and had a question for the student about, where are they doing their paper writing? Where are they saving it? Is it Microsoft on the desktop? Is it Microsoft Online? Is it Google? So students have so much variety, and some of this variation comes based on what your campus has given students access. This includes the LMS like Louie was just talking about. Are you a Microsoft? Are you a Google campus, which Louie and Kathleen have talked about today? There's just, the sky is the limit. And so campuses are so individual, each one of you. What your technology package looks like and what a student prefers individually is different. So that being said, Kathleen, you want to talk about Read and Write?
Yeah, I mean, with Read and Write, and I guess actually I might end up stealing a little of Louis' thunder here because it's really just, our kind of philosophy as a company when it comes to our products. But Read and Write, a license of Read and Write includes access to so many different platforms: Windows and Mac, Google Chrome. We have a new Microsoft Edge extension for the new version of Edge, iPad, Android. So, as Rachel said, wherever students are working, there's going to be a version of Read and Write that can support them. And on the next slide, actually, I do want to specifically point out something that often there's, confusion or kind of lack of awareness of, specifically the different ways that our tools can support Microsoft and Office 365 users. Even though the name of our web-based extension is Read and Write for Google Chrome, that's just the name of the browser, but regardless of whether you're using Google or Microsoft, those tools are going to be available to you. So if you're a desktop user, we have our Read and Write for Windows desktop software that works with, Microsoft Word, different browsers, it installs on your computer. But for web-based tools, we actually have two different, sort of options for Office 365 users. If they're using the Chrome browser, they can use Read and Write for Google Chrome. They don't need to have a Google account to do that. And if you're using the new version of Edge, we have a new version of Read and Write for Edge, and we're continually doing some additions and development on that since the new version of the browser is so new. It's actually only about a month old. So just something to keep in mind, regardless of what platforms or sign-in methods your students are using. There's a version of Read and Write that can support them.
Louie, what about EquatIO?
So I'm excited to tell you about an update for EquatIO. Just like Kathleen just mentioned, we are constantly looking to improve our product and make sure that it is, accessible for all students, no matter what browser they're using. And literally just last week, we only were working in Chrome, and now I'm excited to tell you all that EquatIO now is supported by Firefox and Safari. I know Kathleen did some mentioning of Microsoft Edge. Specifically to just EquatIO, our development team and our QA engineers have not had a chance to test it in Edge, but our tech support folks here in the States have done some investigating, and they have said that it looks like it's working perfectly in the new Microsoft browser. But I wanted to preface that by saying that we haven't currently tested it yet. So with that being said, you're free to try it in basically any browser, really. But we do officially support now Firefox and Safari, which is great because you don't have to limit, or you can't, it's difficult to enforce students to use Chrome. And now we don't have to with last week's release. So excited to tell you we're supporting multiple browsers now in EquatIO.
Awesome. Thank you both. I knew we were going to be super tight on time because Louie and Kathleen had so many exciting updates to share with you all. We have a robust set of questions that people have thrown into the questions box. If you have questions, please put them in there right now. What we're going to do is we're going to take all these questions out. We're going to spend a little time really digging in. There's some complex accessibility questions that I'm really excited to get my hands on and throw some information at you guys. We'll make sure in the next day or so to get you a copy of the recording of this, a copy of the slide deck, as well as every person will get answers to the questions, not just those who ask the question or an individual response. We'll make sure you have all of the questions and all of the answers that come with it. I want to respect your time as it is 2:59. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for sticking in there. There's lots of information. Please reach out to me if I work with you now as your new territory sales director, or reach out to your sales director or regional director if you have questions, need some more information on any of the things that Kathleen or Louie showed you. I speak on behalf of us. We're here to help you. So thank you so much. Have a great rest of your Wednesday.